500 million years ago. The microcontinent was situated near the equator. The Western scientists called it Kazakhstania. The structure with almost full list of elements from the Mendeleev's table inside its depth. What secrets does Kazakhstan soil have? How rich is it? Natural resources are the history of our land for thousands of years.
$180 million years ago, it was the time when the supercontinent of Pangaea broke up into two supercontinents, Gondwana and Laurasia. The last one, as scientists believe, was a phenomenon of the Mesozoic period. And it was supercontinent that included the present territory of Eurasia. However, continental blocks began to separate from Laurasia, which was located on equatorial latitudes. So North America and Eurasia began to diverge on different sides of the world. Eurasia is the largest continent of the Earth. In the same time, from the point of view of the geological history of the planet, it is the youngest one. Its formation began in the Mesozoic and Cenozoic eras. As scientists explain, this continent is composed of several platforms and slabs. Its birth took a huge period of time, but the formation continues till today. Once upon a time, this continent was a land mass, which was separated from North America by the Atlantic Ocean on the west, and it was washed by the ancient Tethys Ocean on the south. Its modern appearance, Eurasia, took in the Tertiary period. Today, the largest fragment of ancient Laurasia covers an area of more than 54 million square kilometers, and today Kazakhstan is one of the largest Eurasian states. Talking about Kazakhstan, our country belongs to the Eurasian continent, which in some period of time broke up into two continents, Europe and Asia. There was a huge sea between it, that called Turgai, if you know. Tectonic processes were taking place for millions of years. The land was torn to pieces, then merged into a single whole again. Mountain massifs grew, depressions formed. Yes, the surface of the earth was falling and filling with seas, then splitting and forming channels for rivers. As a result of such transformations, it turned out that today the capital of Kazakhstan, Astana, is one of the geographical centers of the young continent.
Если говорить о нашей столице, можно сказать, что мы относимся, так сказать.
Talking about our capital, it is located on the Earth's crust that got strong platform with strong shell. Shell that was formed normally mainly by Paleozoic formations. It means that it is the most ancient formation, that is called Ordovician deposition, which was formed about 500 million years ago. The landmass where young capital is located keeps the story of the beginning of life on the planet in its layers. The animal world, which inhabited this area millions of years ago, is hidden deeply in its bowels. For example, 400 million years ago, graptolites lived here. These extinct animals were small. It lived in colonies like corals. And 300 million years ago, in the Carboniferous period, trilobites, which were the earliest arthropods on Earth, lived here. In order to be clear, we're talking about cross-section. We need to highlight two structural levels.
выделить два структурных этажа.
The first one is lower one.
Почему я говорю,
I call it consolidated.
мощность?
It has powerful shell,
То есть мы
so we can reassure everyone that we do not expect any manifestations of volcanic active tectonic movements, because there is strong formed craton.
формированный картон.
The stability of the Earth's crust, as well as the geographical peculiarity of these territories, probably became the reason of appearance of the early stages of human civilization. Astana is located between two waterways, Ishim and Nura. And as we understand today, people have found here a place for living for a very long time ago. According to some scientists, men appeared here in the ancient Paleolithic era. According to archaeologists, the land between two rivers should attract attention as some kind of station between the ways of migration of people.
Что касается бронзового века, то возле Астаны и на территории
We discovered the Bronze Age burial site of the Andronova archaeological culture on the territory of Astana, on the right bank of Ishim.
могильник
Ishim makes zigzag towards the Karaganda road.
культуры.
The items which were found there were sent to the National Museum.
Традиционный могильник Андроновского
Well, this is the traditional burial ground of Andronova time.
человека.
The burial, which was in a sleeping posture, vessels, finds indicate that people lived here.
Возможно,
Perhaps there were a lot of them. There should have been a settlement. We did not find it, but according to topography, we can imagine where it is should be located.
представляем, где оно должно быть.
There is one more unique object on the territory of the capital. It belongs to the era of early iron and refers to the Saka culture. This monument is located near the residence of the President of Kazakhstan, in the natural boundary of the Ishim River. Researchers are convinced that this mound showed a lot about the culture of construction of that time and how ancient people used local natural materials.
Очень интересно,
Very interesting archaeological construction, which shows us how this mound was built and which soil was taken.
и
And one of such interesting details is that it is located on the high, radical shore of Ishim.
И когда у нас тут рядом нет камней, выходы камня находятся где-то в километрах 20-30, но его насыпь, она была обложена огромными
There are no stones near this place.
каменных,
Stones can be found about 20 kilometers away,
чтобы, значит,
but the mount was covered with huge gray blocks of stone slabs, which were clearly brought here to cover the embankment and make such construction.
прям видно.
It can be seen that they brought it wet in some containers, like bucket or some kind of basket.
Там
They carried it from the floodplain of Ishim.
они носили ее с поймы Ишима. То есть с поймы Ишима поднимались люди, поднимались.
People climbed up to the top.
Нес. Почему?
Why they took it from the floodplain?
Вот этот
Because every fragment has prints of this wicker tree.
плетеный
It has different colors.
разного
It is gray, as it is in the floodplain, and it is yellow, as in a floodplain.
болотистое такое
Here apparently they chopped it off, and that's why there is such a beautiful sight.
красивое зрелище.
A geodesic expedition that was sent by Tsarist Russia in the early 19th century went through the steppes. The scientists wanted to explore the rivers Nura and Ishim, as well as to learn about the minerals of this region and ore reserves of the center of the continent. When they passed the fort of Karaotkel, that was known from ancient times by local population, engineer Ivan Shangin, who was a participant of the campaign, suddenly saw a white ruin that appeared in the distance. The guide told engineer that it was the ruins of an ancient city. According to legend, it was built near Lake Bouzoukia. Engineer Shangin wrote about it in his article. However, serious studies of the conditionally named city of Vostok were conducted already in independent Kazakhstan. In the late 90s and early 2000s, the Eurasian State University, named after Lev Gumilov, organized an expedition. Excavations of the ancient settlement gave amazing results.
Самым удивительным оказалось то, что, во-первых, никто из сельских
The most surprising thing was that nobody in nearby villages knew such a word Bouzoukia, Bouzoukia Lake. People said that they did not know that. That was some kind of lake. And so, accidentally, during our searches, we discovered the city. We did not expect that city was located among the marshes in the floodplain of Ishim, because as we know, all cities were built on a high place, because of water and everything else. Suddenly, this monument was located in the left floodplain of the Ishim River Valley. In fact, there are many lakes there. And a year later, we found the map of the Stalingrad region that was made in Soviet times, and there was the lake. It was called Bouzoukia. In fact, it's true that the lake is called Bouzoukia, and on the eastern shore of this lake are the ruins of this monument. Archaeologists have discovered 3 square platforms, each of which is surrounded by a moat and a rampart. The so-called blocks are located around the central area. As a result of the excavations, the researchers came to the conclusion that the appearance of the town of Vostok belongs to the 7th-8th century of our era in the period of the West Turkic Khaganate. Later here, scientists discovered the ruins of 2 mausoleums, a minaret, and funeral fences made of raw bricks. Vostok was a settlement of farmers. Canals, irrigation ditches, traces of the irrigation system, which were found on the site of the excavations, proved that. Since that time, the city, which today bears the status of the capital of a large country, has experienced much. The history of this land can be traced even by its names. For the first time, this place was mentioned by Herodotus as one of the intersections of the Silk Road, which ran through the Great Steppe. In the 19th century, the fortress of Imola appeared here. Some kind of transit outpost became needed in the 19th century in order to strengthen political influence, the development of industry, the development of commerce. And fortress, an outpost, which was built in 1830, became such transit place. Later, it became the city of Akmolinsk. It kept its name even in the years of the Great Patriotic War and during years of the Revolution. It kept it until 1961. In the early 60s, the city was renamed in the city of Stalingrad. It was the center of development of virgin and fallow lands. From that moment until 1992, it was called the city of Stalingrad, and in 1992, the city returned its name Akmola. There are so many versions of its meaning. One of the versions is that in translation from the language of the Huns, it means a western fortress, Akmola. The second version is high hill. And the third interpretation is that Akmolinsk was a trading city. There was a big fair here, especially a lot of milk products. There was an abundance of white. Therefore, the Akmol was interpreted as Akmola. The modern history of this city, its new birth, began already under the name Astana. The bowels of the earth, on the surface of which a modern metropolis has grown, are rich. The region has practically all known minerals, ranging from gold deposits to uranium, coal, and rare earth elements. The soil conditions of the city territory is also very interesting. That is why the construction of buildings and structures on the surface requires a special approach. What I want to say about myths, the fact that Astana, like St. Petersburg, is built on swamps, well, this is not quite a correct comparison. It is impossible to compare the geological structure of the soil of St. Petersburg and Astana. Although, yes, you can, of course, draw a parallel that there never flows, here Ishim flows. But there is a sea, and here is not. There are forests, and here we have the steppe, and many other facts. Even climatically, the amount of precipitation falling out is different. Therefore, we cannot compare two cities. Places here have not the same structure of the swamps as in St. Petersburg. We have another problem here. It is salt marsh. This, let's say, is not the same trouble, but also difficult. The area where the groundwater is most close to the surface is probably in the direction to Kurgaldzhino, Astrakhan route, Ilyinka. This area, also Taldykol or Bashan. There is a system of lakes, which are interconnected by groundwater. And there are swamps in those places, but this is not that kind of swamps, as we used to imagine. As geological engineers say, the structure of the land of the city of Astana has the most diverse type of origin. There are formations of rocky and young sedimentary rocks, such as clay, sand, loam. The conditions and age of its formation are also different. There are rocks formed in Proterozoic, Cenozoic era. The youngest were formed during the Quaternary period, and the most ancient belong to the Lower Ordovician. The breed of this time is considered, for example, a laurelite. This is an interesting formation. It is not a sandstone and not clay. It consists of compressed sand grains and clay particles. In Greek, alevron means flour. Thus, a laurelite can be understood as petrified flour or mealy stone. The formation of a laurelite takes hundreds of millions of years and hundreds of meters of rock layers, which compress the loose material into the stone. Engineering geology studies soils, layers, deposits on depth of up to 50 meters in the city of Astana. There are modern sediments. Here are quaternary formations that are represented mainly by sandy and clayey soils, such as loam, sand, clay, sandy loam. In some parts of the city of Astana, if you look according to the geological map of the area, there are such rocks of Carboniferous age, Ordovician age, Paleogene formations. All these soils have a semi-solid character of solidification. There are such rocks as argillites, alluropyrites, conglomerates, but they are harder than loams, clays, sands. These sands and clay that are layers of soil were formed as a result of weathering of bedrock rocks, grains of which were carried by wind and surface waters. Once in the deep antiquity, there were such processes as transgression and regression of water. That means that the seas and paleoceans closed the land, then receded, and fragments of rocks which water brought remained. Over time, this introduced material was ground and crushed, settling and creating new surface layers. The land on which the capital is located is composed of a different kind of formations. Therefore, serious geological research is needed during construction in the city. Geological engineers are responsible for that. According to their recommendations, architects and builders include the necessary parameters in the project of the future building. Basically, we contact with such soils as sandy loam, sand, clay, loams, which have a quaternary formation. Quaternary formation is divided into genetic types as alluvial and diluvial, lake marsh, lake sediments. That is, alluvial deposits are those deposits that were formed by transporting surface rocks through soil, and later the deposits are formed. The diluvial ones are the soils that were formed during the transfer of clay sand particles from higher places to the foot. It were transferred by rain, by surface water. lacustrine marshy formations formed during sedimentation. The particles settled from the lowered sections of the rivers where the water was. So that's how layers of the soils were formed. Each layer of soil has its own features and physical and mechanical characteristics. There are different types of sand that could be found in Astana. It can be small as dust or large almost like gravel. And as the engineers say, the larger the grain of sand, the stronger the bearing capacity of the soil. But for example, clay is undergoing more serious laboratory tests. Engineers, geologists study the layers of the earth in many aspects. This is the density of dry and wet ground, its humidity, the coefficient of filtration, porosity, and much more. After studying a particular object, a site of work, we give recommendations based on laboratory analysis, based on our calculations. We write in recommendations what can be applied, what kinds of cement should be used. We give answer if the soil and groundwater are aggressive to this type of cement. So we call the brand of cement, which should be used, and which is favorable in these conditions. We give the estimated characteristics of soils, bearing capacity, and risks of deformation. After studying this information, designers know that these values cannot be exceeded. And for hundreds of millions of years, nature has created a huge, multi-stage, multi-layered hard earth that today holds on its mighty and stable surface the young capital of modern Kazakhstan. The largest rivers, Ishim and Nura, cross the city, and several lakes, Tengiz, Karasor, Korgaljan, Balkdikol, Kipshak, create a unique aura of calm and greatness of this land. The president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, noted in his book, In the Heart of Eurasia, that the present capital of Kazakhstan was founded not in an empty place, but on a territory that was inhabited by people in ancient times. At the junction of two millennia, great and amazing megapolis grew up on a place of small town of regional importance in the steppe. Like from the depths that are filled with layers of ancient formations, sparkling crystals of skyscrapers grew up. The business card of the capital is Bayturek. The project was developed on the initiative of the president. The height of the building is 97 meters, and this number is not random. It symbolizes the relocation of the capital from Almaty to Akmola in 1997. The monument itself embodies the tree of life. According to the legends of the nomads, every year the sacred bird Samaruk lays an egg that is sun in the tree crown. The dragon Aidahar, which lives at the foot of the tree of life, swallows egg. This allegory shows struggle between good and evil, or how summer and winter, day and night are rotating. Another unique architectural construction of Astana is the building of the shopping and entertainment center Han Shatir. This is the largest tent in the world. It is designed by the famous architect Norman Foster. He also designed another unusual building that is the Palace of Peace and Reconciliation. However, the whole face of the youngest capital of the world, Astana, consists of unusual architectural structures. Each of it got certain idea and deep meaning from authors and creators. The modern history of the city is directly related to the chronicle of the creation of continents and lithosphere. Once, most part of the world's population settled in Eurasia, and the territory, which today became the center of independent Kazakhstan, was the heart of the continent. This means that the crossroad of trade, political, and cultural routes of the world's largest continent continues its historical mission.